Well, hello there. I am Dr. Jen, and thanks for joining me. I am so happy that you're here and that you're educating yourself on your rental units. Today, I am starting a three-part series about tenant transitions, tenant changeovers. So we're going to start with marketing your rental units. And this is for those of you who are either self-managing or you're working with a property manager, but maybe that unit isn't getting rented. So we're going to talk about the basics of renting. Then next week's show is all about how and when a tenant gives you proper notice to depart, which of course, in order to market your unit, you've got to have a tenant give you notice to depart. And then the third show in the series is about renting to roommates and how do you approach renting to roommates? How's the language a little bit different in qualification and your leasing? But today's episode is all about marketing your rental units, which is really key when you have paying customers. You've got to know how to rent, how to advertise, and how to market your rental units. So something interesting is happening right now. We're starting to see in some areas that units are taking longer to rent, but not everywhere. And that's not necessarily in Canada. That's not necessarily all over in the US, but certainly pockets in the US where you're seeing places like San Antonio, Texas, that rentals appear to have been built up. And there's not enough folks there to rent them. So things are starting to sit for a lot longer, right? So very interesting. But as a landlord, you need to make sure your cash flow is continuing. You've got to make sure that you've got enough cash flow moving. So you can't let your unit sit for too awful long vacant. You need to make sure you have a paying customer, but the right paying customer. So as a landlord, when your unit is sitting for a long time, you can start feeling despair, maybe some panic. And this is when you get into trouble as a landlord. This is when you feel like you've got to rent to anyone with a pulse. You don't check references, you don't check credit, you don't check backgrounds, and you can get yourself into a lot of trouble, right? You can get a problem tenant, they can potentially lead you to some damage, and it usually ends up in a whole lot of stress and a whole lot of money that could have been avoided. So in short, be patient when you're renting your unit. You don't want to rent to the wrong person because these transitions are vital as your life as a landlord. You want to make sure that you get the right person. For me, I would rather have the unit sit empty for another month and properly screen the right tenants to get them in than to just knee jerk and get somebody that is not the right tenant in. So just keep that in mind. But what can you do for marketing your unit? In today's episode, I'm going to go through the who, what, when, where, why, how, and how much of your marketing for your rental units. I'm also going to give you some pointers on where to put these marketing ads to get your unit rented, depending on your demographics and your location. You may remember that I did some of this back in episode 56 when your rental isn't renting, which tends to happen over Christmas. There are other times in the year seasonally, depending on where you are, depending on your weather patterns. So visit that show if you're also searching for more ideas regarding marketing your unit. This is really the nuts and bolts. I haven't done this before, and that kind of surprises me because we're in the episodes. This is episode 94. This is really interesting. So here we go. So here's some of the secrets that I've learned over the 15 plus years of rentals, both in the US and Canada. And while many of you know many of these items for marketing your units, I hope there's a nugget or two in this episode that will help you get your unit rented faster to a great tenant. So let's jump into it. Okay, marketing your unit. Who, what, where, when, why, how, and how much. Here we go. Who. When you're doing a marketing ad for your rental unit, it's almost like you need to write out a template. And that's really what I'm going to encourage you to do is have a template for each of your rental units. Now, if you only have one or two, that's great. You still need it. Okay. So who are you looking for to rent in your unit? And you can't say an individual or a couple or this or that. You got to be careful with your fair housing knowledge. So you can't say who can be in there necessarily, but you can say the characteristics like non-smokers, no pets. There's a being limit, right? So you've got to make sure that you don't say a single person or couple, but if they've got, it's very tricky on how you do the who. You also want to make sure you're clear that you're going to be doing a long-term lease, whether 6 months or more. You also, here's the trick, you also want to align with the seasons. If you're marketing your unit for rent in November, do you want to offer a 1-year lease? Probably not. I would argue not. I would argue say 6-month lease, because then that means that your next lease period is going to end in May, June. And do a 1-year lease after that. So there's a couple of little tricks here, but you want to align with seasons. You want to try to align with school, and you want to make sure you are very aware of the different long-term tenants in your area. So if there's like a company that is doing, like, for example, the traveling nurses is a big thing right now. You've got a lot of traveling nurses. Well, they don't tend to do long-term leases. But if you are renting to a leasing company, nursing company that potentially can help you, just be careful of your zoning. Be careful, because you can't do short-term rentals in certain areas. You might want to call your municipality, your regional district, your county seat, whatever is good, or your housing area nonprofit, and say, look, I want to help with the traveling nurses. Can I rent this unit into, with traveling nurses? Just be aware of who you are marketing for your unit. Okay. Also, you want to be aware of what you're actually renting. This is another thing that comes up, is what exactly is it that you are renting? Are you renting a whole home? Are you renting an apartment? Are you renting a suite? Are you renting a basement suite? You want to say just very nuts and bolts things in your marketing ads. So number of beds, number of floors, if it's a single level, if it's an entry level, if it's stairs down, stairs up. Maybe the laundry is in the basement. People need to know that there are steps down into the basement. Is the unit furnished? Unfurnished? Appliances. Sometimes it's a deal breaker if there's no dishwasher. Sometimes it's a deal breaker if there's no laundry in the unit. You also want to be clear when you are talking about your bathroom. Is there a shower, or is there a tub shower? We tend to find that people with children like to have a bathtub. Well, if this unit doesn't have a bathtub, you want to be aware of that. You want to, if somebody applies and says it's a single mom with 2 kids and they're young, be aware. Now, they make that choice, not you, but you want to state that if it's a tub shower or just a shower, you want to be clear in your marketing unit what's there. Remember, we're trying to get the right tenant in the right unit as quick as possible. You don't want to waste time. If you just say it's a bathroom, and then you go all the way through the pre-qual, and then the single mom with 2 small children get there and they realize it's just a shower, and that's a deal breaker. Try to get those deal breakers as quickly as you possibly can. Okay. All right. Back to what exactly are you renting in your marketing unit? Talk about what heating system is there. Is there baseboard heat? Is it a furnace? Is it a split system like a heat pump? Does it have air conditioning, right? What is or what is not included, and who pays for what? Is the tenant paying for the heat? Is the tenant paying for electric? Is the landlord paying for the water or the trash? You need to be very clear on what additional costs, because just like you're doing your budget, the tenant's doing their budget as well, going, you know what, the base rent is this, then I have to pay for internet, then I have to pay for whatever else is not included. So you got to make sure you're aware of that. Things like yard space, shared laundry or not laundry. Is it coin operated laundry? They got to know all these things. Also, is there any amenities? Let's say you're living in a subdivision and it's a single family home or a townhouse that includes a clubhouse, and they have access to either a pool or a clubhouse or amenities. Sometimes they have things like a putt-putt course or a dog park. All these little things are quality of life aspects that might be worth it for them. So make sure you're spelling this out. Now you might be saying, Jen, my ad's gonna be really long. Yeah, it is. But we'll talk about where you can put your ads in a bit here. Okay, let's talk about where is the unit. So be specific. Don't just say it's in Dallas, Texas. Be specific. If you want to put the address, you can. You don't necessarily have to put the address. And sometimes I don't. Sometimes I don't put the address. Sometimes I'll just say it's in this neighborhood. And that way you don't have people knocking on doors. That's happened to us, where potential tenants are knocking on doors and disturbing the current tenants. And it's like, oh my gosh, that's really not appropriate. But where is it? So you can say the general location, you can say the address, but you also want to be specific on things like, is it walking distance from a grocery store? Is it walking distance from a bus stop? Is there a bus stop on the property? These are all really incredible things. Is it near a trailhead? Is it near a bike path? All of these neat things that might be things that the potential tenant is interested in, especially if they've got young kids or they've got dogs or they're adventurous, things like that. They might be really interested in things like that. But it can also be a detriment depending on what you want to do. Let's say this unit is right next to a dairy farm and the dairy farm is stinky. You got to be careful because you want to be clear and say this is next to a dairy farm. So they want to, evaluate for yourself. Do you want to disclose that? You don't have to, but you can. Maybe you should. But I also encourage people if there is some kind of either noise or smell, then I would say, look, do a drive-by. Make sure this area is gonna work for you. Again, you're trying to not waste people's time, including your own. Okay. So that's the where. We've done the who, the what, the where. Let's talk about the why. Why on earth would this tenant or why on earth would this unit be available? The long-term tenant has departed, freshly renovated, all of these little things. Why would this person want to rent your unit? So I will put things in and say, look, the long-term tenant has departed. I'm a long-time landlord. I don't normally put that I have a podcast in there, but I've told people that and say, hey, come listen to the podcast and listen to me talk. But if the unit's been freshly renovated, fresh paint, new appliances, things like that. Now, the other thing that speaks volumes is the pictures. If you can even do a video. I don't typically do videos though, but you want to do pictures. And how on earth do you do pictures? Well, here's how I do it. I do a picture of the front of the house or the front of the unit or the front of the staircase, something that is the front of like the curb appeal part. That's the main picture for this unit is the curb appeal one. So, but then when you go up into the unit, I'll take pictures of all the common area. So the common area, the staircases, the laundry, the mail, the pool house, anything that is, common area stuff, the yard, even if it's a shared yard, the dumpster, every single thing gets a picture. And then the unit itself. What I will do is I will literally stand with my back into the corner of each room. So each bedroom, literally, I will take a photo to the right and I'll take a photo to the left. Now you might be thinking, oh my gosh, Jen, you're probably taking a photo of a wall or a window or a closet door. It looks like nothing. You're exactly right. But you would not believe sometimes the perspective on these photos really matters. But if you do that in all four corners of all the rooms, every single room, including the kitchen, including the bathroom, sometimes if there's a walk-in closet, do it in the closet as well. It sounds crazy. But at the end of the day, you're going to end up with like 40 pictures, 50 pictures maybe. Make sure the lights are on and make sure the toilet seats are closed. All of these little bits and pieces that might work. The lights are on. You want to make sure that your curtains are open, the blinds are open. You want to make sure that you've got lots of natural light showing in these photos. If you can, try to get it on a very nice sunny day if you can. Now, sometimes you're taking these photos, like I said, in November and it's snowing outside or rainy and, you can't help it, but do the best you can. But the trick is I always do all four corners of each room, and you want to make sure that you've got as updated photos as possible, especially if you're offering a furnished unit. If your furniture has been updated, use the most current pictures. Okay. All right, next thing. So when do you market your unit? Well, when they depart, when the tenant gives notice, which is of course the next episode. We're going to talk about the next episode in this series of 3. This is the first episode of the 3. Next episode, we're going to talk about what do you do when a tenant gives notice. But when they give notice and when you're going to be able to actually offer this unit to the next tenant, you're going to be available to say, look, here it is. It's going to be available on the 1st of this month, or maybe even the 15th or the 5th or whatever day it is, and you'll be able to know. So that's your when, but you don't know that until the tenant gives notice, which is why we've led into the next episode. So I'm going to leave that one a little bit more until next episode. Okay. How do these people apply? How do they even get pre-qualified for a showing? Now, here's the trick that I use, and I've used this forever. I have a very simple website that's got a simple application. and it has options to upload things, and it has all kinds of information that people can provide. Now, off the hop, I will tell in my marketing ads, if you are interested, please go to this website, pre-qual yourself. We don't show units because that's the number one thing that people say is, I want to see the unit first. You know what? We don't do that because, again, we're trying to find the deal breakers as quickly as possible. If it's a 2-bedroom unit and they're a family of 9 with dogs, that is not going to work. We will not even show the unit. It's a deal breaker right off the bat. So we have to pre-qualify people for a showing. But how do we actually do that? Well, we direct them to our website, and that's the biggest thing in your marketing ad, is that they have to have some kind of action item. What do they do? Do they make a phone call? Do they go to the website? Do they pick up an application at your property manager's office? Like, what is it that they have to do to move forward? For us, it's go to this website, submit your application. You do not have to upload pay stubs and ID and all that stuff off the hop. If you do, that's actually even better, because that allows me to pre-qual, because if they've given us a full application just straight off the hop, then we can actually go in, and when they view the unit, if they view the unit and they love the unit, honestly, we are probably very close to a qualification already. If they haven't given me all that information, then I have to go back and I go, okay, I need your pay stub, I need your landlord reference, I need your ID, I need this, we have to verify that. So it takes longer. And remember, we're doing this concurrently with multiple applications most of the time. So that's how they do it, is pre-qual, and then we do a showing, and then we can qualify them and move forward towards signing a lease. But you have to get them qualified first. But before you can even qualify them, they have to finish the application, if that makes sense. You can't just give it to them right off the showing or whatever. So let's talk about how much is the rent amount. Now, how do you know this? This is one of the biggest things that people ask on social media, is how do I know how much my unit is worth? How much should I rent it for based on the local area? Well, take a look at what the other units that are comparable. Are they comparable in age, comparable in size, comparable in amenities? Is it an apartment that another apartment is listed? If you want to, if you know of a comparable apartment complex and you are renting an apartment, call them and say, how much is your 2-bedroom renting for right now? And they say, $1,400 plus utilities plus this, whatever. They will tell you exactly what they are offering their units for. Do something similar. Or if you go, you know what, mine's a little bit dated, I'm not going to rent it for 14, I'm going to rent it for 1350 or for 1200 or whatever it is you want. But that's how you would do it. And of course, in your marketing ad, say rent is $1,200 per month plus security deposit. And then in some places you might have a pet damage deposit, or there's a deposit, either bond or policy, in some local areas in the US and Canada, where instead of paying a security deposit, they basically buy an insurance policy to cover that in the event they skip on the rent or whatever. So there's other options for a bond. Also, the utilities, you need to be clear on what utilities the tenant pays for. I've had people come back saying, hey, well, how do I know how much the electric is going to be for this unit? And I will say, look, call the electric company and say, I'm interested in renting this unit, and here's the address of this unit. How much should I budget, per month? And they'll say, you know what, over the last year, the average usage, the average bill has been, $60 a month. Okay, well, there's your answer. But it didn't come from me. It came from the electric company, because I'm not paying that bill. I wouldn't know how much the electric is for that unit because I wasn't paying for it. Now, if I was paying for it, I can tell them on average it's this. Just like internet usually I can say is, $100 or $80 or whatever it is. So, but keep in mind too, that for a tenant, especially a new renter or somebody that's new to the area, new to the electric company, new to the phone company, whatever it is, they might have to pay a deposit to that utility company, or, water. That's another thing, is they say, no, you know what, we need a $100 deposit or whatever. So just keep that in mind, is that it might be a little bit bigger for the tenant to budget based on if they have to pay a deposit to one or multiple utility companies if they're new to town, something like that. Okay, so who, what, where, when, why, how, and how much. Let's talk about where you put your ads. Okay, So let's talk about who are your potential tenants. Your potential tenants in your area. Let's talk about where your state, your province, your territory is. If you are locally near, let's say, a university, and a lot of your tenants are university students, well, where are your university students looking for rentals? Probably online. Doesn't always have to be that way. So it's interesting because I'm seeing that there is some demographic changes, and they're not necessarily biological age. So I want to be clear about that I'm not talking young and old. I'm talking either tech savvy or not tech savvy. And I know a lot of older folks that are very tech savvy. And I know some newer folks that are, they're pretty good at tech, but maybe not. So depending on who your demographics are in the area that you are going to rent to, you might consider taking out a good old-fashioned newspaper ad. I do it for where my rentals are in Canada. Excuse me. I will take out a newspaper ad because that's who is looking at renting units. Now, remember, in that newspaper ad, what is the action item that the potential tenant has to do? What is it? Well, I will say, look, call this number or go to this website. So it'll say something, it's usually 3 lines. It'll say 2-bedroom, pets okay, available October 15th. Here's the website, here's the phone number, right? So that's where so it's just a very small little classified ad. And it's typically in the print paper, and it's also online. So it can happen both ways. Now, there's also other ways you can put your marketing ad online that is the full ad. It doesn't have to direct you to a website. And that could be something like Craigslist. In Canada, there is a marketing company called Kijiji. So we use Kijiji. Facebook Marketplace. Now, one thing about social media, if you're going to use Facebook Marketplace, you can leave comments on. You can also turn them off. Sometimes people can get really snarky and can be really nasty and say, what a piece of crap, or how can you charge this? Landlords are terrible. That's fine. You know what? That's business in general. Sorry, get some thicker skin if that really offends you. Sorry, you need to just kind of get over it. So sometimes on Facebook, if it gets too snarky for me, I just turn the comments off. Like, I'm not interested. Here is the unit I have available. If it is, great, message me. And then what I'll tell them is write in the ad. If they let you put the website in, I put it in. But if they don't, then I say, message me. Okay, here it is. Pre-qual is go to this website and submit just a basic application so we know who you are. The other thing that you can do is, as I mentioned, you can say, go to your property management company and pick up a hard copy ad, a hard copy application if you're interested. I also put a PDF version. If people want to print the PDF version and handwrite it out and fax it or email it back to me, I offer that. And so there's a couple different ways you can do it. Also, I know Zillow has an option. TurboTenant, if you're in the US, has an option for applications. There's just a lot of different software and it's constantly changing. I've been thinking about doing an episode on tenant software options. I still may do it, but it changes so fast that you just really want to know what's available. And you can just Google software option, tenant software Texas, or tenant software Manitoba, wherever you're listening to this podcast on. Just take a look on where you can put different things. But again, your local newspaper may be the easiest thing for you, even if you think people aren't reading it. Guess what? Grandmas, grandpas, moms, and dads read the newspapers and say, hey, Joe teenager, or Joe 20-something-year-old, there is an available unit that they put an ad in the paper. And so even if the potential tenant themselves doesn't see it, maybe a family member or a neighbor or someone will. And all these little network things work. So just try different things. Don't make assumptions that just because you're looking for university students as your tenants, that they're not reading the paper or their family's not reading the paper, because you don't want to make assumptions like that. And that's part of the secrets of this, is do lots and lots of different media for your marketing ads, but make sure it has an action item of what to do if they want to move forward, what that looks like. Okay, so that's part of it. There you go. There's some of our marketing your units, secrets to it. In today's episode, I talked about who, what, when, where, why, how much of marketing your rental units give a few more ideas on putting those ads to let everybody know the unit is available. So here's your call to action. Make sure you have a template for each of your units when that unit is ready to go. Have it ready. Have your pictures ready. And that way, when your tenant gives you notice, you're ready to post the unit available. You can do this in advance. You can do it in a non-panicked, non-urgent atmosphere, and you will feel confident saying, you know what? If my unit comes available, what am I going to do? And you know what? You can go, I can cut and paste. As soon as I know a little bit information from the departing tenant, I can cut and paste and I can create my marketing ads pretty quickly. I usually try to have the marketing ads done within 30 minutes. But you have to be prepared in advance. So that's my call to action for you, is to make sure you have everything ready to go in advance. If you enjoyed today's show, the biggest compliment you can give me is by leaving a review so that the people who need to find my podcast can find me. Join me next week for the second episode in this series, episode 95, where I talk about what to do when a tenant gives notice of departure. I'll see you there. Thanks.